Arianna Huffington, with her guest, Ellen Burstyn. From the heart.
A woman's voice says, "Hello?" A man says, "Hi." And she goes, "Oh, is that you? I can't believe it." She says, "How are you?" "Oh my God, how are you?" "I'm real well. I just thought I'd call and say hello." "Oh, that is so astounding. I dreamt about you last night." "Really?" "I did. It's so amazing you're calling me today." "You want to tell me the dream?" No. And it was an ad for the telephone company. And I thought, wait a minute. You mean the telephone company, AT&T, now recognizes the psychic connection between people, that people are dreaming about each other and calling each other, which happens in my life all the time, and that's being used as a commercial? That means it's really out there. I mean, if they can exploit it, it's really in the mainstream.
Here in New York, 25 years ago, Ellen Burstyn, a determined young woman, decided she was going to be an actress. She came here to the actor studio to study with the very best, the legendary Lee Strasberg. Lee Strasberg became her friend and mentor, teaching her that before she could successfully portray other people, she first had to learn who Ellen Burstyn really was. She learned how, like most of us, she'd been avoiding real communication with other people. What's more important, she saw how she could begin to peel her defenses away, to be vulnerable, to express herself without fear and without guilt. Although she didn't know it at the time, it was the beginning of another, a deeper search. A search that went much beyond being a great actress. Ellen Burstyn has maintained her close connection with the studio, which has trained and inspired some of America's greatest actors. When Al Pacino received the British Best Acting Award, he gave it to Strasberg. When Marilyn Monroe died, she left all her personal belongings to Strasberg. And when Ellen Burstyn, in 1974, received her Oscar for Best Actress, she said, "Everything I have today, I owe to Lee Strasberg." But the journey from these early days in New York to that Oscar night was not easy. In fact, it was long, hard, and often frustrating. In her late 30s, she was on the point of giving up when she got an offer for a major role in the film Tropic of Cancer. That was followed by The Last Picture Show, and then that huge box office success, The Exorcist, where Ellen played the mother of the possessed child. She was now in a position to use her influence in Hollywood to help create films that embodied the ideas and beliefs that were really important to her. And characteristically, she did. For far too long, Hollywood had caricatured women as belonging to one of three basic types: sex symbols, victims, or bitches. Ellen Burstyn wanted to portray women who were both modern and heroic, and that was the impulse behind Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, perhaps the first film in decades to show a woman who takes her life in her own hands with determination, passion, humor, and with no sense of being a victim.
Take this off my hand.
I feel sick.
What do you mean?
Like I'm gonna throw up.
You want me to pull over?
No, I'll tell you when I feel it coming. Mom, I feel it coming.
Okay,
Mom,
okay.
Mom.
Okay.
Come.
All right, just get the door open. Stick your head out the window.
It's all right. It's all right. It's all right.
I mean, you don't want me to stop?
No. I feel it again.
Okay, all right, honey. Just hold on, honey. Aim it out the door.
All right. No, I'm all right.
You don't want me to stop?
No, it'll get us to Monterey sooner. Mom, are we in Arizona yet?
If you ask me that one more time, I'm going to beat you to death. Just sit back there and relax and enjoy life, huh?
Life is short.
So are you.
She went on to help create the film Resurrection. She played a faith healer in it, who was at the same time a woman full of life, sensual and nurturing. It won her her 5th Oscar nomination. But being a movie star is only part of Ellen Burstyn. She said once jokingly that when she reaches St. Peter's Gate, they probably won't have seen her movies, so she'd better have some other credentials to offer. So her aim is to use everything that life brings her, including being a movie star, to get to the truth of who she is.
Since memory is a process where, and it's the process that's really the crux of Lee's teaching, where you train your senses, that is, say I want to play a scene where I'm in a garden and I'm in love, let's say. And now here I am on a bare stage in a little building and there's no garden and I'm not in love. What do? Well, I can remember a particular day being in a garden and being in love. And on that particular day, the world was incredibly beautiful. Not just my beloved, but the scent of the roses was overpowering. The world looked magical to me. And so in that moment, I don't just try to remember with my mind the beauty of the world, but I try to remember with my nose the smell of the roses. I try and remember with my fingertips the touch of the green leaf of the roses as I touch them as I walk by. I try to remember with my cheek the actual experience of the breeze blowing on my cheek. Now, it's not just remembering those as ideas, but experiencing them so that I can actually smell the roses. See, that's possible. That our mind is not just in our brain. Our mind is throughout our body, throughout the whole totality of our being, and our senses have memory. And if we speak to that memory and we ask it to come alive for us, it will.
And somehow I feel that even if one had not been in love, one could recreate that experience. Or am I wrong about that? Let's not take being in love, because everybody has been in love, but let's take murdering someone, as you did in when you murdered your 3 children in Dream of Passion. And you said somewhere that everybody has the murderess in her. So even if we have not experienced it this lifetime or in actuality, there is a part in us that knows it.
Now, for instance, when I worked on Dream of Passion, that's a very good example, because I built that character here. And I'll tell you the process I went through. I accept the fact that each of us are like a hologram of the universe, that we're a little chip that contains the whole universe. So I said somewhere in me is the murderess, and I want to find her. So I thought, well, what I'll do is I'll kill something on stage. I'll find something that I can kill, And I'll take the classic Medea, and I'll say the lines of Medea, and I'll kill something. Now, I'm an animal lover, I'm a pacifist. The idea of killing something is impossible. So I started thinking, well, all right, now don't be a hypocrite. You eat chicken. You go to the grocery store and you buy an already killed chicken, and with its feathers plucked and its head removed, and it's disassociated from the little animal clucking around the ground, but you eat it. So now why don't you just face that and go to the butcher shop and buy a chicken and bring it here alive and cut its head off on stage and say the lines of Medea. I thought, oh, that's a very good idea. But I couldn't do it. I said, aha. So already the first problem, which of course that's what you want, is to come in contact with your own truth. You know, I went through all of the stages in my imagination of buying the chicken, bringing it here, cutting its head. No, I couldn't do it. So I said, okay, fine. What can you kill? Cockroaches. I think I could kill some cockroaches. I said, okay, fine. You get some cockroaches and you bring them to the stage and you'll say the lines of Medea and you'll kill the cockroaches. I thought, wait a minute. I have to kill 3 children. Killing cockroaches and my children, that's not the same thing. So that's not any good. And as I was wondering what to do, there was a chair on the stage, an old dilapidated chair that had been around here for 7 years, an old leather chair that was all broken and its stuffing was hanging out and its legs. And I just looked at the ugliness of that chair and I started to hate it. And I thought, I could kill that chair. And then I started to want to kill that chair, to enjoy the idea of killing that chair. So I then put some pieces together. And the next morning I stopped at the butcher shop on the way to the session and I bought some lamb kidneys. And I came in here and had raw lamb kidneys on the table. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with them, but it was the idea of flesh, bloody flesh. I had that chair that I really wanted to kill. And then I created, with sense memory, a child that I love. Not my own child, because that if you do something too strong, then it backs up on you and you can't break through it. But a child that I love. And I created him so that I could see his face, I could touch his hair, I could feel the silkiness, I could see his eyes looking at me, and I loved him. At some point, and this is the part of the process that I can't talk about, because I don't, it's intuitive. I started serving the lamb kidneys to the imaginary child. And naturally the child wouldn't eat them. And then I converted, and I don't know how to say this, into a shrew in my head and started insisting that the child eat them. And the more the child screamed, the more I insisted he eat them. And then at a certain point, why I don't know, I picked one up and put it in my mouth, raw, and chewed it, and then spit it out and rubbed it on my face and started beating the imaginary child, which disappeared and it became the chair, and I demolished the chair. I killed the chair. Now, that was a bunch of pieces I put together that ended in a physical act of murder of a chair, but there was a created child that, because after all, when a mother kills a child, she's probably not killing the child. She's probably, the child is getting killed, and her anger is really aimed at something on the other side of that child, maybe her own parents, maybe her husband, and maybe herself.
But it must be a very different process when you have to tune into something negative in yourself rather than into something positive. I mean, if one compares what you had to do in Resurrection, where you had to tap more into your own healing powers and your own love and caring compared to tapping into the murderess in you, how different is the effect on you?
Well, tapping into your own healing powers is much more satisfying to the ego than tapping into the murderous. But it's really basically the same thing. We don't like to, we like to face the lovely aspects of ourselves and not the shadow side. But in fact, the shadow side is equally as fertile and rich food for the creative process. And the creative process itself is so dynamic and so beautiful and rich and exciting that I'm just in awe of it, in all of us, and what we're capable of. Whether it's a great artist like Picasso or just a child playing, that what comes up from the imagination, I think is the most incredible blessing that we've been given, this body and mind, the mechanism that can function that way, So I must say that I am equally as satisfied with work as a murderess or as a healer.
I'm just thinking really of how getting in touch with that negativity in us can be used in real life, because sometimes it can be overwhelming.
It's necessary to know how to take a spiritual bath,
How do you take a spiritual bath? Maybe we can market it.
Well, it's really just, there are lots of different techniques for it, but it's just acknowledging the light, acknowledging the darkness, and releasing it. Not being unconscious. I think you can work with anything. It's like healers that work with cancer, and take it on and pass it right through them. So it's the same thing. You asked how we can apply it to life. You can imagine a situation where, say, you're in a meeting of some kind, a business meeting, where there's a lot of tension and anger and competition and a lot of negativity that has to be dealt with. And you can deal with it in many different ways and respond to it in a number of different ways. If you take it on, if you confront it, and if you deal with it, and then you walk away with it, take it home, think about it all night, dream about it that night, wake up in the morning, you're stuck with it. But if you release it, if you just let it pass through, you did it, and then when it's over, then you've taken a spiritual bath.
I find really releasing it through breathing very effective.
Yes, or even, in traffic. Somebody does something foolish and cuts in front of you and almost causes an accident, and you scream at them and swear, or whatever it is. We all do behind the protection of our little mechanized selves. Then you can, your heart, there's a release of adrenaline, your heart pumps, maybe your hands sweat, your body goes into reaction, because you've experienced that. You can then go on swearing at that person for a good long time and be stuck there if you want, all the way home, and go home and tell your people you live with about it, what a dope this guy was and how foolish he was and how bad people are and they drive. And, you can ride that as much as you want if you want to. Or you can just let go of it. My life has now gotten so busy that if I don't let go of things as soon as they happen, when they're over with, then I can't get through my day.
I was wondering, when I was reading about the chronology of your life, whether there were moments when success was eluding you before it happened, whether you felt those moments that maybe you were on the wrong path, or that maybe you did not have the ability to create your life in the way you wanted to create it, whether you despaired or gave up at any point.
There was one period when I moved to Rome in '68 where I was in my late 30s then, and I wasn't famous, or I worked, but I wasn't really
established.
I wasn't a success, say. I was a working actress, but not a big success. And And I remember thinking, well, all right, I guess I won't be a famous actress then. I guess, okay, I thought I would be. Well, all right. And at that period, I had really given up acting, and then I got a call to come do a movie in Paris, and that was a kind of turning point in my career. Tropic of Cancer was a film, and from that point on, everything changed. But it did follow a pattern, which I've noticed is maybe a law of the universe. It's a consistent pattern, and I used it in Resurrection, too, where she was trying to make herself walk again. And she tried and tried and tried and did everything that she could to make herself walk, and then got to the point where she said, well, I guess that's it. I give up. I guess it's not going to happen. I'm not going to make it. I just can't do it. And then the fly comes and lands on her toe, and she wiggles her toe, and it's the beginning of walking. And I found that in many, many instances that the pattern is that you try and try and try and try and try and work and work and work for something, and you go as far as you can possibly go through your own effort. And then when you feel that you've just done everything you can do, then you surrender and say, well, that's it. I give up. And at that moment, the universe answers with what you've been striving for. And that's happened to me so many times that I recognize it as a pattern.
And it's a very subtle thing, isn't it? Because it's not really a giving up in the sense of resignation. It's more a giving up in the sense of acceptance, isn't it, of whatever the next step is.
It's just it's a surrender to what is. You know, it's like we believe that we can make things happen, and we do everything we can to make things happen, and then at a certain point we have to allow them to happen. You know, and you allow them by just breathing, as you say, or just relaxing. Stop trying so hard. But I think before you get to that point, you have to have tried as hard as you can try. Then stop trying.
And also give up quite a lot of things. I don't mean just physical things or addictions or habits, but your teacher talked a lot about giving up illusions. Was that an important part in your process? I mean, were there many illusions that you had to give up?
The thing that comes to mind as you're talking is an illusion I had early on, formed in my childhood and early in my career, which was part of the whole illusion of femininity in the 50s, say, of you know, all those definitions of what a woman is, a cook in the kitchen, a lady in the parlor, and a whore in bed. And that brought with it a vision of what a woman looked like, and a way a woman acted, and the way that an actress acted. And I brought all of those illusions to Lee. I brought all of that on stage with me, and I would say he was very, he was like a surgeon in cutting that away for me.
Was it painful?
It was very painful.
You've tried in so many of your films to break through the feminine stereotype. How does this apply in your own life?
Well, I don't think I ever fit the feminine stereotype. I mean, I tried to, but somehow my life has always been so unconventional that whenever I tried to fit the feminine stereotype, it didn't work, and then I would feel that I failed. And then finally, at a certain point, I guess I just accepted, you know, that not everybody swims regulation breaststroke. I mean, some people develop their own kinds of ways of motivation in the water, and same in the world. And so I just accepted it after a while.
Is marriage regulation breaststroke?
Yes. Yes, I would say. I tried to be married. Lord knows I tried.
3 times.
3 times. And I always liked the idea, and I was always conscientious wife. But it just didn't work for one reason or another. And I try not to get into blame about it and say that, you know, I didn't select the right men to be married to, or to say I just can't be married, because I don't know really. I really don't know. I just know that it didn't work, and it's possible that marriage doesn't work for me. I think a lot of marriages are based on the idea that that a man needs help, and so he gets an assistant, takes an assistant in marriage, and she does the housework and takes care of the kids and gets the clothes to the dry cleaners. And you know, I was willing to do that, and I tried to do it, but just somehow it came unraveled. And I sympathize with that feeling, because I feel the same way. I wish I had somebody to clean the house and take care of the kids and get the clothes to the cleaners. But there are other arrangements besides
marriage
to have that. So my relationships are all unique. I feel like I'm always reinventing the wheel with each relationship. You know, I have to establish the rules all over again. And I live in a kind of complicated setup. I live in a large house with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, 6 part-time.
One of them being your son.
One being my son. And the other are friends. Mm-hmm. And we share a large house, and we have a communal kind of living. And we have a very good time doing it. But it's very difficult because there are no already established rules for that kind of life. And it's a very, very interesting process, but not easy.
Mm-hmm. So you are close friends, but you are not romantically involved with each other?
No.
And you've never been?
No.
But do you find that you miss that close relationship, that close romantic relationship under the same roof?
Mm-hmm. Sure, I do, often. On the other hand, I don't need that to define my life. That is, I have things that I'm very involved with, which are very satisfying to me. So it's all right for me to have a romance and not have it be a marriage, or a one-to-one commitment. At the same time, sometimes I'm lonely. Sometimes I feel very needy, vulnerable, and like I wish there were, you know, a large pair of arms to curl up in, and they're not, and I feel bad then. But I can deal with that because there are other blessings in my life that I'm very grateful for that I have instead.
And you are open to the possibility that it may happen?
Oh, yes, certainly. I'm open to the possibility, and at the same time I recognize how difficult it would be for a man to fit in my life as it is, because there are a lot of demands on my time, and I can only do the things that I do with a support system around me. I have a lot of help, and for a man to fit into that would be very difficult. So I'm aware that my life is missing a one-to-one relationship, and at the same time, in many ways, precludes it. So I'm resigned to not having it, and at the same time, open to being surprised.
Mm-hmm. Open to the miracle.
Yes, open to the miracle. That's right.
I was amazed to see how your acting experience with Lee Strasberg, and obviously with yourself, and your experience as a Sufi initiate merge. How did that happen?
I at one time thought that there was the professional work and the spiritual work, you know, and the personal life and the public life, that they were all somehow unrelated and different. And And the moment that it occurred to me how it was all one world, I was at Pir Vilayat Khan's camp on top of the Alps.
How did you meet Pir Vilayat?
I was in London. I met another man first named Rashad Field, and he was the first one that introduced me to the whole world of Sufism and what that is.
Mm-hmm. I read the book that you wrote, The Last Barrier.
Oh, did you?
Yes, and on the cover you are quoted as saying that if you say yes to the knowledge in this book, it will transform your life. Mm-hmm. In what way did it transform your life?
Well, Sufism is not really a religion. As a matter of fact, I remember Idris Shah in one of his books said, Sufism is not a religion, it is religion. And there can be a Jewish Sufi or a Catholic Sufi or a Muslim Sufi or a Hindu Sufi. And it simply means a seeker of truth. And it's what we were talking before about the path from illusion to reality. The recognition that the world is not necessarily as it appears to be. That our perception of the world is through our conditioning and through our senses, and that there is another world that is also existent, that is perceptible if you seek it. So a Sufi is a seeker of truth, and it's not a dogma. It's a way of life. It's an attitude toward life.
For me, this is one of the most exciting aspects of this new yearning and the expression of this new yearning for the spiritual in us. The fact that we all tend to get to the core of what unites the different traditions and the different religions. I mean, so many centuries have been spent fighting over what separates the religions, you know, over the dogma and the doctrine. And when I was reading The Last Barrier, I was so struck by the way that some of the basic teachings and the basic lessons were simply expressed in a different way.
I remember when I realized that there was truth in all of the religions, and my objection had been the concept that we have the truth and all the other religions don't have the truth.
Because of course you're a Catholic.
I was brought up Catholic, and the idea that I was brought up with was that the Catholic religion was the true religion, and everything else was a kind of aberration. And that didn't sit right with me. It didn't seem to me quite right that God would create a world where there could be millions of people on the other side of the world with a concept of God, and they wouldn't be allowed to get into heaven. Only those of us who signed up with the Catholic Church would be allowed to get in. Then when I came across the teachings of other religions, I was startled at how they were really the same. It's love your neighbor as yourself. And
as you said in Resurrection, God is love and love is God.
Exactly.
And at the same time, don't you find that a lot of people feel it impossible to accept God because we cannot avoid the suffering around us, we cannot avoid the pain and the violence. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, as you said, there is that overwhelming magnificence.
But it's your point of view too. I mean, I'm sure you've had this experience. I have it very often where I say we'll be in my car driving along the road and thinking a thought, thinking about an incident or a person who is causing me pain, mm-hmm. and I'm suffering and maybe crying and upset and completely identified with that particular pain. And then suddenly I will look outside and see the world and how beautiful it is, and the trees going by and the people, and then go, wait a minute, I can choose to focus on this, mm-hmm. or I can choose to focus on that. The choice is mine. It's all here. The suffering's here, yes, and the beauty's here. Now, what do I want to put my money on? You know, do I want to say, yes, there is God because the world is beautiful, or no, there is no God because there's suffering in the world? You know, it's your point of view.
Well, that really comes back to one of the main principles of all religions, that real transformation is to start from the individual, which goes right against our culture for the last few centuries, that where the assumption has always been that governments and politicians will transform the world and eliminate suffering. Do you see us being anywhere closer to accepting that, to accepting ourselves as the starting point for transformation?
Well, that idea is certainly circulated now much more than it was, say, 10 years ago, where more people accept the idea that they may not be able to do anything about that guy over there, but they can definitely do something about themselves. And that if you want to end war in the world, that you can start with yourself. There's a wonderful line of Cousin Zachas, Spiritual Exercises, a book. Do you know that book?
Yes.
The Spiritual Exercises, where he, in one of the chapters, he says that he wants to be like a captain who reports to God at the end of each day, I took care of my sector of the battlefield today. You know, and our sector of the battlefield is our own lives, inner and outer. You know.
And to begin to accept that we can make a difference there is the beginning of accepting that we can make a difference in the world.
But we are making a difference in the world.
Automatically.
I mean, yes, because you know we're part of the world, and if we can, any moment that we can love instead of hate, we're making a difference in the world.
And it somehow puts the significance back in our individual lives, and
which we've lost.
Which we've lost, and that sense of a meaning beyond the satisfaction of the American dream of what we own and how successful we are. And I feel that this message, this teaching, coming from someone who is so established in a profession which is conventionally identified with glamour, can be very powerful. And I must tell you that I personally wondered when you decided to stand for election for the Actors Union, why you were doing it.
I'm not sure it was a rational act. We have a union, the Stage Actors Union Equity Association, has 85% unemployment. It's a shocking figure. I'm not satisfied with the condition of the American theater. I just was in London a couple of weeks ago, and our actors are just as good as the British actors, maybe even better, but their theater is better. Also, I think it's a crime that we don't have a national theater. We're a rich country and loaded with talent, and there's no reason that countries who have less resources than we do should have a national theater and we don't. And I felt that as president of Actors Equity Association, I could perhaps affect a change in that. I'm going to try and combine my acting career with my work as president of the union. For instance, I have just said yes to a play called 84 Charing Cross Road, which is currently playing in London. We have a terrible situation between British actors and American actors. We're at war with them. American actors feel that British actors come over here and take all of our jobs away, and British actors like to come over here because they get much more money playing here than they do in England. My feeling is that if actors in London and New York can't get along, how do we expect the governments of the military of the Soviet Union and the United States to get along? So again, my sector of the battlefield is actors. I know that the American actors would love to see those productions that I saw when I was in London, like the full Oresteia the Royal Shakespeare Company is doing from 5:30 to 11 o'clock, all 3 plays with a quick dinner break. All male cast in masks. Just brilliant. One of the most exciting things I've ever seen in the theater. I know that American actors would like to see that. American public would like to see
American actresses wouldn't.
Oh no! It's fascinating to see. It's fascinating to see men play women in a classical vein.
Maybe one could do it the other way around afterwards.
Well, I don't know. It's a good idea, but it's interesting to see what is feminine. How in other words, the same chorus. First they play men, then they play women, then they play the Furies, so that and they have masks, so it's not in the face, so it's just in the body. So how the change of gesture goes from masculine to feminine.
And that, of course, links up with your own fascination with the feminine and the masculine being very much part of each human being.
Yes. Yeah, well, I think that's a real deep study of the masculine aspects of a woman and the feminine aspects of a man, and isolating them and working with them, how we relate to each other. I think very often, I know relationships where the man inside the woman falls in love with the woman inside the man. So you can isolate those aspects of yourself. You can find those places in yourself where...
Have you isolated your man and your woman?
Well, it's not, it's a fluid thing. It's not like Ellen and Charlie or something. But there are moments, where I can feel myself relating from, say, my intuition and from my maternal side or my caring side, my nurturing side. And other times it's time to have that go to sleep for a moment, just step aside. And it's just our, all the work that's been done on the 2 sides of the brain. It's feeling that. I feel it when I act. If I pick up a text and I just read the words, that's the verbal side of my brain. It's just the words. In order for acting to occur, I have to activate my feeling side. That's where the technique comes in. That's the other, thinking, feeling, or intuitive, rational. I mean, they're all just different words, but they're aspects of ourselves that we can isolate and tap into and use as tools. Well, a balance, when I'm acting, if I'm just talking, nothing's happening. If I'm just feeling, but nothing's being expressed verbally, the audience isn't necessarily going to know what the play is about. So it's the combination, it's the wedding of those two that creates art. Well, it's the same thing in a human being. It's the internal wedding of the masculine and feminine that creates a whole person. And, I think the perfect marriage would first take place inside one person, in the other person, and then the wedding between those two complete beings.
I was very moved, in fact, at the wedding I was present at your house, under that wonderful tree in your garden, when just before the judge was about to pronounce the couple, man and wife, you interrupted the proceedings and asked everybody present to ask themselves, really, what is the point of getting married in 1982? And I was wondering, was that a spontaneous decision, or had you planned to do it?
We planned to do it. I said it as a joke one night, that at the point where they say, if anybody has any reason why these people shouldn't get married, let them speak, no one ever hold a peace, that I would leap up and say, wait a minute, what are we doing here? And I first said it as a joke, and then Lily said, I think that's a good idea, let's do that.
Lily being the bride?
Yes.
It was wonderful, it was so powerful, because what could have been a kind of debunking thing ended up enhancing the whole ritual and making everybody feel much more the significance of what was happening.
Yeah, and I liked what one person said, is that it's like a statement of intention, of commitment. Really making a commitment of your life to link up with the other person's life, so that you have a real partnership. It's like a contract.
But I also liked the more general point that I experienced, which is how you can break conventions, not out of a nihilistic tendency or out of wanting to deny what goes on, but break conventions in order to enhance and enrich even the tradition.
Well, I think that very often we go through rituals that are hundreds of years old, and they become so kind of cemented in form that they lose their meaning. Who made up ritual originally? You know, they don't have it. It's no handbook, you know, in the Bible, and this is the ritual you do for whatever it is. People create rituals, and we can do that, and they're wonderful. It's wonderful to start just working with the concept, you know. If your own marriage ceremony or your own baptism or your own confirmation, you know, whatever it is, just do it the way it feels good from within to do it, and it's also valid.
Of course, acting and theater in ancient Greece were part of the ritual and part of religion.
Yeah. To me, this building is an old church, you know. The actor's studio is in a church, and rightly so, because I think that what happens on stage when it's real theater, it's a spiritual transmission. The audience does connect. The inner part of the audience connects with the inner part of the actor, and something is communicated that is of the nature of a spiritual experience.
It comes back again to this questioning and to somehow avoiding getting mechanical, whether on stage or in life, isn't it? It's like making love.
That's right.
If one does not recreate it as though it's the first time, even that can become mechanical and meaningless.
Well, that's the job of the actor, is how to be spontaneous on the 40th take or on the 300th performance, to be performing an act as though they had never done it before. And that's why I said before about working with habits, you know. We can function, we can make love or make dinner or act in a play without really thinking about it, or say a prayer without really thinking about it. And then I say prayers every day while I run, but I change them every day. I create new prayers so that, or new versions of old prayers, for that same reason, because we're built in such a way that if we don't jostle ourselves and shock ourselves, demand of ourselves that we be awake, we can fall asleep and go through life mechanically and die before we're dead. And that's always seemed to me to be the one thing in life that I never wanted, was to die before I was dead.